joined now by Daily Faceoff contributor, former assistant general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, our friend Chris Gear here with Sekeres and Price. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Happy St. Patty's Day, guys. I got my old Whalers shirt here for the occasion. So
I was wondering what the Whaler content was, and then I remember the date. So yes, you're ahead of me. The best I can do is teal here with my Stoker logo.
Well, it's St. Patty's Day, but it's also the first NHL game I ever saw was at the Hartford Civic Center. So it's got.
What brought you over there?
Growing up in Montreal, but not wanting to see the Habs, I went actually to Hartford, visited some friends, and we went and took in Oilers and Gretzky against Ronnie Francis and the Whale. So pretty good introduction for a first game.
Chris, errors and omissions. You mean Ray Ferraro and the Whale?
Yeah,
Ray he'll be very upset. He'll be very upset not to get to Billy.
I'm not sure Ray's ever been on a list above Ronnie Francis, but he would have been.
For sure.
Whoa, here we go. Nice work. Nice work. So you've been on a number of deadlines from the inside. What's it like being on the outside looking in on all this?
Yeah, it's interesting to be focused on 32 teams instead of one team, right? And obviously when you're with one team, you know what's going on with all the other teams, but looking at it from a completely different perspective in terms of what teams may be thinking and just paying much closer attention to the things that they're doing.
Let's stay broad for a second here. How much are you looking ahead? And I'm going to guess the answer is it varies from team to team and where you're at. But how much is a team in now mode? And let's frame this here for a team that's at least where the Canucks are now to anybody above them. So the teams that are either in a playoff position or flirting with, how much are they caring about down the road right now versus where they're at the moment and the winning now? You obviously have to look ahead a little bit to make sure you're not trapping yourself, but are you willing to take some risk on the future for the now, do you think?
I think so. It's a great question because there always is that balance. You don't want to mortgage your future, but the allure of trying to win a Stanley Cup is pretty strong in the boardroom, for the business, for team ownership. And I think if you're a team that's close, like Florida, Colorado, Carolina, teams that are right there this year, that has to be tempting to say, you know what, a futures piece may come back to hurt us, but the opportunity to win is just so great and so lucrative for everyone involved that it makes sense to go for it.
And I think we've seen some of that to date already, guys. That was a pretty significant price that Florida paid for Ben Sherratt, and then Calgary throws 3 draft picks to Seattle for a bottom 6 third liner in Yarncroc. Does that portend, Chris, to pretty steep prices here as the time counts down and the options dry up for these buyers?
I think it might. I mean, you're right. Both of those deals carried pretty significant prices. In the case of Florida, I think it addressed really the one weakness they had, or not even a weakness, but just getting better depth on defense. They've got a really good group on defense now that should be able to compete with any defense core in the league. And for a team like Florida that's going for it, I would take that chance, even though it is a high cost. I think as we get closer and closer, some of the prices may fall a little bit. And clearly, once you get right down to the last couple hours, prices tend to fall. But, the deals that get done 2 or 3 days ahead of time, they generally do have bigger prices because teams are trying to get out ahead of their competition.
I'm surprised at the prices, too, because it seemed like we were joking about this earlier. In the wake of the Toffoli trade, the GMs were kind of walking away going, we're going to pretend that's not part of the deadline, that we're going to reset the market, make no reference to Toffoli. And I expected the prices to come in lower. And then as Matt says, I mean, those were kind of deadline-y prices. We're kind of right back to where we expected. And that's good news for teams like the Canucks. If they get any home run offers, it seems like that's back on the, at least within the realm of possibility. I'm not expecting somebody to back up the Brinks truck for Besser or Miller, but I was beginning to think that was completely off the table if they were hoping for that reset, and it doesn't look like that reset happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's still enough teams that think they're close and that want to add pieces that, that competition, it's supply and demand, that competition brings the higher price tag. So, if the Canucks do want to do anything, then I think there probably will be some better returns than they might have otherwise thought.
What do you think they will do, Chris? Like as you go in and you guys are having a show on Monday, like as you go into this weekend, what do you think if you were predicting the board for your GM in the room going, okay, we're going to size up our competition here, what would you be telling your GM about what you anticipate the Canucks are going to do?
That's one I don't really want to wade into too much. I think, that's for the new group to decide. And the last thing they want is for someone from the old regime to be in their kitchen. They've obviously got some choices to make with Tyler Mott. If the price is really high for him, they obviously have to think about that. But he's also a guy you don't replace that easily. Just what he brings, he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. You may have a player like Will Lockwood that can step in for him, but Lockwood may not be ready. So Mott's obviously one that's been talked about a lot as somebody they might move. The Miller one, I think people have rightly moved past that and said he's too valuable and he's got another year, and you can always have the same debate next year. So, and then the Besser one, obviously he's been talked about as well. The QO is high, but it's not to say, I'm sure they've had discussions with Ben Hankinson about an extension and trying to get that at a more reasonable rate than the QO. If they decide to keep him, they can still move him in the summer. They can keep working on an extension. There's no urgency. They've got lots of flexibility and lots of different ways they can go. They could even reverse salary arbitrate Besser if they want to, if Besser's camp is insistent on the 7.5 qualifying offer and they want to bring him to ARB to get that down. So lots of options, but Patrick and Jim and the group are very capable, so I'm sure they'll make some good decisions.
In terms of reverse arbitration, it is more likely the player takes the team to arbitration. So when we say reverse, it's the more irregular scenario where the team takes the player to arbitration. I just want to make that clear for all. Okay.
Exactly right. And the team can get up to, I think, 15% or up to 85% of the QO number. So that's a fairly significant savings in a case like this.
Of course, that is a process that can leave some hard feelings, right?
Absolutely. But I wrote an article earlier in the year where I made the point that, players take teams to arbitration all the time. So why do we never see it from the team's perspective? And, it is a business. And if that's the road you want to go down, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, frankly, even though it doesn't happen often. I think it's a viable alternative.
What do you think is going to happen around the Vancouver Canucks? Because in addition to the Canucks playing very well of late, teams around them have given them that opening, in particular, a team like the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't think you acquire Pietrangelo one year and Eichel the next year and think, oh, okay, this is just a down year, we can eat it. They've got to figure something out soon. Do you suspect that a team like that tries to make a splash, despite the fact that, they don't have a ton of wiggle room to work with here?
Yeah, they're in some trouble right now. They just announced too that Robin Lehner has a fractured patella, I believe. So he's unlikely to return. And, I'm not sure they can carry Laurent Brossoit all the way to a playoff spot. So they've got teams nipping at their heels. Obviously the Canucks are one of them. And with the injuries to, Alec Martinez and Mark Stone and, now Lehner, I'm just not sure that Vegas has enough to get them there. If they do get in and all those guys get healthy, they'll be a force to be reckoned with, but it's going to be a challenge for them. Do they try to make a splash? You mentioned it, Blake, they don't have a lot of cap space with having brought Eichel in, but they do have all the LTIR room now, so they could have a $110, $120 million lineup. But it's a tough one because if they spend more and don't get in and sacrifice more draft picks or prospects to get there, they're really mortgaging the next few years.
Is Ken Holland in the same boat?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Koskinen has played better of late. He's kind of solidified their goaltending. They made the trade for Evander Kane earlier this season. They might not tinker too much. I think maybe they make a trade to shore up the goaltending, but anytime you have McDavid and Draisaitl, you need to make the playoffs. So Kenny probably does feel that pressure, but the Kane deal might have been his big move to try to move Edmonton into the playoffs. So we'll see if they do anything else.
depth pieces, particularly depth pieces on defense, tend to be in demand at the deadline. What's the old line? It takes 8 or 10 defensemen to win the Stanley Cup. You know you're going to go through some during the Stanley Cup playoffs. Which brings me to Luke Schenn, who's had a marvelous year here and is under contract at a really good freight next year. Travis Hamonic, who's played a lot better since returning to the lineup, and even Tucker Poolman. Do you think those three right shot Canucks defensemen have some value here between now and Monday?
Yeah, I think they all do to some extent. Obviously Schenn's played so well with Quinn Hughes, and I guess Hamonic's been there a little bit lately, but they all have value. Schenn's been on Stanley Cup champion teams, but again, the Canucks are in a playoff race, and they're valuable to the Canucks too. So is Schenn going to get you a high enough pick, or Pullman or Hamonic, that it's worth sacrificing that race? I don't know. That's a decision for the group to make. But I think they would all be pieces that other teams would have interest in.
Well, just one of the things that I'm on the lookout for over the course of the weekend, and I think this was illustrated by yesterday, the tie that bound Yarncroc going from Seattle to Calgary and Sherratt going from Montreal to Florida, is those were both very digestible contracts, right? Like not just rental guys, but Yarncroc on $2 million, Sherratt on 3.5. So with retention, it is super easy to fit those types of contracts in, even so many cap tight teams, and it looked like teams paid premiums to do so. Do you anticipate that the lower cost guys, the guys who are really easy to fit in cap wise to your lineup, may fetch a higher cost here because of that?
I don't know about a higher cost, but definitely I think teams will be looking at those deals more closely. I mean, you look at players like Claude Giroux or Hampus Lindholm or Giordano, they've all got significant cap hits where even if the team retains 50% of that, you're likely going to need a third-party broker to step in and eat some more of that contract. So those are going to be tough to move, and they're going to cost a lot because you're going to be paying two different teams in order to facilitate a transaction like that. So, yeah, the lower-cost guys, like Justin Bronze of the world, that you can get at a reasonable number and digestible, as you said, I think teams will really seriously consider those moves maybe ahead of some of the bigger chunks.
Lastly, Chris, part of a trade deadline show on Monday. Tell us what you got coming up there.
Yeah, we've got a 3.5 hour live streaming show, dailyfaceoff.com, 9 a.m. Pacific time through 12:30 will be Frank Saravelli leading the charge, and all of the writers, Scott Burnside, Mike McKenna, Chris Peters, myself will be contributing at various points throughout the afternoon. Matt Larkin just recently joined the team from the Hockey News. So really good, experienced crew. And, if you can't get to a TV, you've always got a computer, and you can stream dailyfaceoff.com. We'll be providing lots of insight, and we got your back.
Look forward to it, my friend. Nice to see you again. Nice to hear your voice. Thanks for this, Chris.
You guys too. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Chris Gear, everybody, former assistant general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, now contributing with the Daily Faceoff crew. And you heard they got their streaming show going Monday for trade deadline. Interesting what Chris said about the prices falling in the waning hours when the desperation kicks in for sellers, and I think it's going to be fascinating, Blake, the activity on some of these Canucks players, not just Mott, but Schenn as well, because he's so low cost. And I think the lesson we got yesterday from Calgary and Florida is that buyers are looking for low cost guys. So who knows? Canucks may have some surprises.
I think the Poolman story would have been very interesting if he had maybe just an additional year left. Or maybe even the 2, but the 3 more for Poolman. I'd be blown away if that happens.
4-year deals for third pair defensemen, not advisable, although I think they thought him a second when they signed him from Winnipeg.